is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Millions of people watch The Golden Bachelor on TV. They saw senior widower Jerry Turner meet women, select a mate, and even get married on live TV. And 3 months later, the couple divorced. Which brings us to the question, are reality dating shows just good entertainment, or do they have a negative effect on the dating relationships of both the participants and the people who watch? We put that question to relationship coach Frank Kermit, who is back on the show. He joins us via Skype from right here in Montreal. Hi, Frank.
Hello, sir, and how are you?
Just tickety-boo. Just doing better than that couple, I can assure you. So there are so many shows on television. I know you don't watch them. I don't watch them either. But just to give a list, there's Too Hot to Handle, Love is Blind, Love Island, The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, Married at First Sight, 90 Day Fiancé, Dating Naked, Farmer Wants a Wife. And that last one, that is a show that is done regionally all over the world. There's a Canadian version, American version, British, Australian, the list goes on and on. There are dozens of these shows on television right now. Good thing or bad thing?
Okay, let's start off with a certain premise. And this is something that when I do coach people, I make sure that they understand this. There is a difference between entertainment and education. And just because you're watching a show that gives you hope, and by all means, entertainment is there in part to give people hope. It's there to make people feel good. When you're trying to figure out if a relationship is for you, a relationship partner is for you, that comes from knowing yourself. Let's use the example of fairy tales. What is the classic ending of most fairy tales in our society?
Oh, well, and they live happily ever after.
Happily ever after. Do you know anybody who realistically lives a happily ever after?
I know a few, but they're few and far between. But I know a few.
But the few who, let's say, are happily ever after, there's usually some kind of price they have to pay. They have to be a certain type of person. They have to have certain types of expectations. They probably had to work on themselves to get to that point. Happily ever after doesn't just happen. Doesn't happen in a vacuum. And the happily ever after is not something that's realistic. There's work that has to go into happily ever after.
Do you think people who either go on these dating shows or even just watch dating shows have a false sense of the outcome, or even a lower sense of realism?
Okay, I understand the instinct for everybody to go ahead and blame media. And what I'm trying to explain is that it's not the media that's influencing these people. It's the people who influenced the creation of that media.
Okay.
That's the key here, okay? These shows cater to a demographic that already believes in those things. It's not like somebody watches that TV show and says, oh, golly gee, well, I saw that show and now I'm going to start believing a whole bunch of things about relationships. The media reflects the audience first and foremost. Now, can the media influence audience members? Well, of course, human beings are influenceable creatures. If I'm driving in a car and I see somebody with a flat tire and I see somebody else helping them fix that flat tire, and I continue driving for a few miles and I see somebody else with a car breaking down, I'm much more likely to stop and help the second car because I've just witnessed the first person helping someone with their broken down car. We are human beings. We are creatures that of influence. We can easily be influenced. But when it comes to relationships, if you want a great relationship in your life, the onus is on you to know yourself, know what you want, set a life plan, and then look for a partner that best matches that. You got to know what you can and cannot deal with. It's not this idea of, well, when you're in love with somebody, you'll just tolerate it. That's great for fantasies, but people don't even tolerate their own family members. People have traumas that they've never dealt with. People have idiosyncrasies that just rub other people the wrong way. So the reality is, it doesn't matter what your influences are. Ultimately, happiness is dependent on you being responsible for your own choices.
So do you think that people who watch reality shows, and I'm not, and again, you described the horse before the cart as opposed to the cart before the horse, and saying that it's the general population that drives the need for television to create these shows. But do you think that people who watch these shows end up with a lower expectation of happily ever after, or a greater expectation of happily ever after? Or does it wash?
Here's what I think, and I'm just going to try to sum this up.
Yep.
In the end, I think people watch shows like this because, number one, they really are entertaining. Okay? It's a fun form of entertainment. You get to see other people's lives. And for some people, it gives them hope. They look at these things as examples of the way life could be. It gives them an idea that, well, if some of these people might find a connection, maybe there's hope for me out there. Maybe there's hope for me that I'll be able to emulate or have the type of relationship that I see on screen. And that's a good thing. I think these shows fulfill a need for people to escape to give them an idea of what's possible. However, in the end, the only person who has a job, the only person who's responsible for making your life more amazing is you. And when people go out into the real world and they try to make these relationships work and they're struggling, you know, when you date somebody and it doesn't work, you can point the finger at the other person all you want, but at some point you got to look at yourself and say, I'm the common element in every single relationship I get into. And if I'm struggling to meet somebody worthwhile, maybe I'm not bringing enough to attract somebody worthwhile. And that's a really hard realization. That's a very unpleasant place to be. But it is the starting point of having an amazing life.
Okay, well, here's another dynamic in the situation. Couples who watch the show together, and I'll use another example. You remember back in the day, and I believe they still have it, where Cosmopolitan would ask a question or ask a series of questions about your relationship, and one person, and let's face it, it's Cosmopolitan, so it's a magazine rather that's geared toward women, and women will ask their mates these questions, and they'll argue about it. Well, I know people who have sat down watching these shows and have argued about it. One person thinks it's ridiculous, one person thinks it's great, and it causes all kinds of problems.
Okay, the problems didn't exist because of these shows.
Okay.
The shows may bring to light cracks in that relationship's foundation. One person liking it, one person not liking it is not going to be the cause of a fight. But when one person says, I love this aspect of the show, and the other person says that aspect is not important to me, now we're getting into a value system. So the key here is let's look at the values underlying the opinions. And maybe there's a conflict with these values. So let's choose a really hot button topic here, okay? Because let's get right into this with a hot button topic.
Okay.
Let's talk about when two people have different religious beliefs and they're in a relationship. And now the question is, well, how are we going to raise the kids? In what religion? In what faith? What traditions are we going to expose them to, and what traditions are we not going to expose them to? These are conversations that couples need to have before they decide to get into a committed relationship. You're not in control of your feelings. You're going to fall in love and you're going to be attracted to a variety of people, but just because you have feelings for someone doesn't necessarily make them a good life partner. Having those kind of discussions, here's my life plan. I want to raise my kids in such and such a faith. I want to expose my kids to these things, and I don't want my kids to be exposed to these other things. A lot of the couples who fight when it comes to things like religion, different religious beliefs, these couples usually didn't have a thorough conversation beforehand. They figured, oh, we love each other, it'll all just work out. It doesn't just all work out. You really have to figure out what it is that's important to you. And here's the clincher. If people don't know themselves well enough, they might think, oh, when I get to that point, this is how I'll react. And once they get into that situation, they're not so happy anymore. So suddenly things bother them that they didn't think were going to bother them. And you have to talk it out. If they're fighting over a TV show, there's something else really going on. There's a value conflict, or there's maybe something else that the couple is unhappy about. They don't talk about the thing they're really unhappy about, so they argue about something that's really inconsequential.
I think all you've just said is you've laid the groundwork for the importance of what you do, and that is people should see a relationship coach when they're starting a relationship, not when they're at the end of one or near the end of one, because it may be too late.
Usually at that point, whatever whatever incompatibilities are full blown. What I advise anybody to do, and if there's anybody listening right now, write out your life plan, your day-to-day expectations going forward between now and the age of 100. And it has to include things like where you want to live, how you want to raise your kids, when you want to retire, if you want to retire. You want to start your own business? You want to work for somebody else? Do you have a job that takes up so much of your time? And does your partner have the expectation that suddenly all that's going to change? Or do they understand that, listen, I got with you because I love how you're passionate about what you do, but I understand that you're going to be at that passion and in that industry 14 hours a day, and I may not get to see you most evenings, and I'm only going to get to see you on the weekends, if then. These are the things that people don't necessarily want to discuss or think about because, hey, we love each other, so quote unquote, it'll all just work out. Well, it doesn't all just work out.
Final question, and that is, would you ever go on one of these reality shows?
I don't think anybody would want to see me on a reality show. I ain't cute. I ain't cute enough to be for TV. That's why most of the media I do is on radio and audio.
Okay.
Nobody wants to see this face on TV on a regular basis.
And I prefaced this earlier in the conversation. You don't watch any of these shows, do you?
No, I don't. I generally don't watch very much television. I will binge watch a couple of shows that may have garnered my interest, but these shows, no, I don't watch them. And there's not that there's anything wrong with them. Okay, I'm not against them. I think it's a fantastic form of entertainment. And look, people need good entertainment. People need to escape the misery of their lives. And if a TV show like these can provide that, that's a wonderful thing. Just don't confuse the entertainment for education.
And on that note, Frank, thank you once again for being a guest on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
I can't wait to be on the show again. It's always a pleasure, sir. Be well.
Relationship coach Frank Kermit. You can check out his website at franktalks.com. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com. Check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0767, and you'll find the link to his site.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.